Mari Bjerck and Maria Røhnebæk speak to us about co-production of services for new refugees in Norway. They point to the need to consider how to best represent these voices across the different stages of the settlement process.
So just to start, the background for our presentation is a paper that we wrote on enabling and constraining conditions for co-producing with vulnerable users. I just want to clarify first a little bit about the co-production, co-creation concepts. There's a lot of literature discussing the different co-concepts. And I'm not going to go into that discussion because it's a bit tedious at times, but we use the title or the term co-production in the title of our paper. But since the co-production concept is easily associated with sort of the co-production of and the manufacturing of goods, we have switched to the concept of co-creation. That's because we're concerned with the co-creation of service for people, and also with the co-creative elements in engaging with people to come up with new solutions. It's important to talk about vulnerability, but it's also very problematic. And we also want to highlight that. Why is vulnerability an important but also a problematic concept? When we talk about vulnerability in our paper and in this presentation, we understand it as different states of powerlessness in interactions with a public service system. And the reason why the term should be used cautiously, we think, is that it is somewhat patronizing. Stating that someone is vulnerable implies that you state that they are weak, and you may downgrade and blur the strength and resourcefulness that they are representing. And this is very evident in our context, because refugees might be labeled vulnerable, but living under hard conditions and then being able to flee and come to a new country is more an indication of strength than vulnerability. So these are the aspects that we need to take into account when we talk about vulnerability.
We see the co-creation with vulnerable users on three levels. So we see it as a level, the co-creation can take place in the direct service interactions. So that is, could be the meeting between a refugee counselor and the refugee, for example. So it's direct meetings. And we have co-creation at the organizational level, which is more of, for example, the municipal planning of the introduction program, which is a program provided by municipalities in Norway to newly settled refugees. And we have the co-production at the system level, which is it could be more of a political level, which set the framework for the services that is provided for the refugees. So we see that there are three different levels in our figures, and there are also two modes of co-creation where it could take place. Co-creation could be done directly with the refugees, with the users of the public services, but it could also be done through a representational, mediating through different actors that are supposed to represent the users, the public service users. A 12-page document with lots of words, a lot of bureaucratic language, mostly meant to satisfy the authorities, I would say. So what we found when we looked into it was that it was the bureaucratic language, surprisingly, was very hard to deal with for a person that might not know the language, and also many being illiterate. That was a big problem. And so we presented this to the municipal to the municipalities, the managers, kind of representing the refugees and their voices. So is this something that we need? What could we do with it? And that led to them redesigning the individual plan in a more, in another way, getting rid of most of the bureaucratic language. They still had to have some of the plans, but they used this as a way to coordinate the program for the individual refugees throughout. So where am I and where am I going? What are the steps towards the goal that I have?